Oh, so I met my old pediatrician, Dr. Bohn.
Okay.
I called him up and I left a message on his answering machine where he just sort of vaguely rambled on and whined about how no one wants to listen to me blather on about random non-significant symptoms from my medical history and put them together into some sort of cohesive picture. And he called me back the next day and he was like, "Oh, sure, I'd love to."
I'd love to waste my time.
It was weird how enthusiastic he was about it.
Maybe he works with kids all the time with really aggressively annoying parents, and he just wants an excuse to not deal with them or something.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if he's practicing right now or what. I think he works in Milwaukee, and I think he works for Covance, but I'm not sure. I know that he went through not just a nasty divorce, but apparently, like, his ex-wife is in jail for trying to murder him or something.
Wow.
And he has custody of the daughter from her previous marriage who is blind, and he lost everything at some point. I don't remember why. I'm not sure if I ever knew, and found Jesus and eventually sort of got back on his feet again and so on.
Gave up Jesus.
No, he's still pretty Jesus-y, actually.
So, wait, he actually put together the thing yet, or it hasn't happened yet?
What thing?
Your medical history.
Well, we already met. I didn't end up thinking it was necessary to give him the medical history. He didn't. We talked about medical stuff to begin with, after just usual shooting the shit kind of thing. But reasonably quickly, things took a bit of a tangent, and we got into arguing about theology, which is interesting because he actually knows quite a lot about the sort of stuff that I overlap with from other directions. Like, he knows about the miracle of the sun and that sort of thing because he's a Roman Catholic and he takes it seriously. You know, and I said Lucia dos Santos, he knew who that was. So, interesting to argue with him. Most of the stuff he seemed like he was pretty on his toes with regard to the usual atheist counter-arguments and this and that. One thing that did seem to take him aback was that after I got done agreeing with him that, you know, Satan's basic sin was hubris, you know, denying the authority of God or whatever, and that humankind's sins essentially stem from that too, within a Christian moral framework, that's what it comes down to. I pointed out that, but without Satan, there wouldn't be a story, and that I don't know if it was that he had never considered that fact before, or that he had never considered someone using it as the keystone of an apology for Satan.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't know what to say for a few seconds there. It was one of the few points where he seemed to have to sort of collect his thoughts. But one of the interesting things I realized while talking to him is that the intuitive communication, quote-unquote, that I have with this thing is what people are doing when they pray. When they pray to God and they get messages, but he's not actually talking in their head. That's the same thing.
Well, I think that would have been easy to connect.
Yeah, it's obvious in retrospect, but I didn't make the connection. I just thought of Dan Mitchell.
Right.
But
do you think that part of the brain that we supposedly have for dealing with religion is something to do with the elves, or?
I think it's more like in Voyager. You remember the episode where some sort of stupid chaos field aliens make Chakotay go crazy by activating his crazy gene?
Yeah.
It's like, why me? Because you have the gene. The crazy gene. Yes, the crazy gene. I think it's maybe more like that. It was sort of opportunistic. But, you know, it could go either way. There are times when I think that basically the whole of the human mind was sort of tweaked into being as fucked up as it is and having all these sorts of interesting quirks and things, and that a naturally evolved brain would really be considerably simpler and more streamlined and less interesting. I don't know. But near the very end of the thing, after we had ended up talking for, like, my throat was sore by the time we were done talking, and he talked more than I did.
Wow.
So that was a lot of talking. His daughter called during the thing to ask him what he wanted for dinner, and he was like, "Oops, I over talked here." And then his phone died, so I had to have him borrow mine to call her and tell her whatever was going on. And then she called back because we continued talking for another half an hour or so, and he still wasn't home, and so then he had to leave. But he told me to try, asking the entity that I was intuitively communicating with if it was God, and he seemed to be confident that it was, but respectful of the fact that I might agree, disagree or whatever. Did not seem to really be on his mind that it might be,
Satan?
Yeah. Which it seems like it would have been. He clearly believed in Satan. He explicitly stated that he did. But it didn't really seem to be on the table. I'm not sure why.
Maybe because he likes you.
Maybe. I told him about the good people and evil people thing with the personality functions and such.
Yeah, well, I was at work and I was thinking more and more about getting angry versus getting hateful. I think I really erred more towards the side of anger. It's like 50-50. Like, I have hate and anger at the same time. They go hand in hand.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. You get mad in a way that seems to sort of synthesize the two.
They're almost the same emotion for me.
But at the same time, though, when you express negative emotion, sometimes it does seem sort of inauthentic to me. Like you're playing them up more than's really there, so I can't really tell what's going on.
Well, certain portions of my personality are exaggerated for the purposes of comedy.
Yeah, and you're a difficult one to read.
Not that difficult.
Anyway, so I figured what the hell. I took his advice, since the way I normally communicate, quote-unquote, with the thing in my head is by just pressing next on shuffle on my MP3 player, which is also my phone. That's what I did. I asked in my head, who are you? And push next on shuffle.
The suspense is killing me.
Yeah, guess what song came up?
Something Jesus-related.
I don't really have much Jesus-related.
I mean, vaguely Christian theology-related.
Huh?
Was it, what's that Added like song, where it's like shooting up in the boys' room?
The Invasion of the Polaroid People. No, it wasn't that.
It wasn't by Monster Magnet.
I don't even
have that.
No, I don't even have anything by them. Asgromo guessed that it would be I Am God by Negative Land, which is in there.
You should get that Monster Magnet album, Power Trip. Really good.
Link me to the thing.
I actually have it from like 10 years ago.
Oh, alright. Look it up then. Monster.
It's got a lot of the lyrics are very, not super cryptic, but, he uses a lot of imagery, which would be good for that kind of thing. Is it Trogdor?
I don't have that. My whole music library is on my phone because I have a 64 gigabyte SD card, but I do not have that. What's the name of the album? Power Trip?
Power Trip.
Downloading.
I can only look for my own music library, but I don't share so many things with you.
Yeah. Well, I'll just tell you.
It was Purple Toupee.
No. It was that Matt Kresling song about defaulting on your student loans, the ukulele, which would be kind of anticlimactic, except that if you recall, the title of the song is The Beast That Swallows Its Young. So that's the answer that came up when I asked, who are you?
That seems to fit in with your elf theory, making us miserable. Ourselves.
Well, I mean, it's a complicated answer. It reminds me also the NASA song, The People Tree, which is about God. So it's not exactly a no, but
you need to ask, who are you really?
Then I'd probably just get a Laurie Anderson song.
Just keep asking the same question over and over again until you realize how meaningless the answer is.
Until you get the answer you want. That's not saying you stop.
Yeah.
The beast that swallows its young. So I've been looking at things from that perspective today. What was I gonna say? No, I don't want to update microtorrent. Fuck you. There's you remember when I had the reobservation subgenre breakdown thing, which I think is basically doesn't work. I think it's reading things into things that were not there. But there is a legitimate progression of some kind of that nature somewhere. I don't think it has anything to do with the path of insight.
Sure.
And maybe it's more of a lattice than an actual progression. But some of the things that I outlined, particularly around the point where I ran out of meaningful labels for them, ambivalence and especially prehensile predation, seemed significant to me at the time, and that does fit the beast that swallows its young too. Prehensile predation, this thing that's eating itself.
Like an Ouroboros.
Right. Like Homestuck and Poorly Planned Comics and all this shit. That's how it works. I mean, it's difficult to condemn when I do it myself.
The beast that swallows the young, it's not really eating itself. It's creating things and then eating them.
The boundaries of the self are somewhat semantic.
I I disagree.
Where do you think the self begins and ends?
When you create another sentient being, as in you're young, there's something else that has sentience that's completely independent of yourself.
Did I paste you my description of that dream I had where I was Simon?
No.
There were two parts to it. The first one was just sort of a creepy glitch thing. Where did I type this here? The second part, I was in a bookstore, and there were these. There was a new sort of genre of fiction that was displacing paranormal romance, and it was based on steganography. Which, do you remember what that is?
No.
Steganography is the practice of hiding text in other text. Like, you know that thing I wrote about, it's like some kid's report on Battleship, and then if you align the text at a certain width, the right-hand column spells out something else.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of shit. Anyway, these books would have a story, typically with a large cast of characters, and then a shorter but more important story buried inside it, which you read by reading every other line of the main story or some such. And the covers always showed people made out of hosts of other people, a la Leviathan. But it wasn't just a format convention, it was actually a genre, because these stories would somehow interact in a way that went beyond one being embedded in the other, or concerning the same characters. The characters in one story were sort of aware of the other one. I think the characters in the embedded story were aware of the one they were embedded in, and generally as the book went on, the reverse would become true as well. And they weren't horror stories per se, but there was generally something inherently horrific about them. The little people felt that they were being abused or consumed or something by the big people. I woke up thinking, what have I done? And this was a day or two before I met Dr. Bohn. So, the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, the boundaries of identity in something like that do get a bit blurry. If someone's life is made out of sort of this edited patchwork of pieces of other people's lives.
Well, in a way it is true.
Yeah. I mean, like, let's say you're writing a comic, and the comic is a heavily fictionalized version of your own life. Is that a separate person? You know, arguably it's not a person at all, but then, you know, again, your criteria of personhood is another sort of line in the sand. I don't really think of my characters as children, or as my children, but the analogy could be made.
Children. And you eat them. How?
Well, I don't think that I do eat them. Not exactly.
But, well, I was trying to work my way into the argument that the person that you're getting intuitive communications with is actually just yourself.
Right.
But
it's a different outline of myself.
Was this duality at its finest? I don't know.
It certainly includes a part that I don't intuitively sense as being part of myself, so by my own intuitive sense of self, even if it is me, it's not the same me. It might be considered to be a bigger me that includes what I consider me intuitively, but also other parts.
Like the carpet.
Well, only if I'm on salvia. That's one of the other things salvia does, is it makes you feel like you merge with objects. Your sense of self extends to things that aren't animate.
Oh, I thought I'd try intuitive communication myself. But my method of communicating was, I close my eyes, I see all those weird shapes and stuff. I got a shape I hadn't seen before, though.
What shape was it?
It wasn't like it was just like a swirl, like it was a radar sweep, starting from the center of my vision, going clockwise.
I have that sometimes. Weird. I have that sometimes, not too often. Terrence McKenna, I randomly ran into a bit where he talked about that. I think it was in regards to salvia, actually, where he's just giving you instructions on how to use it. Apparently in the psychedelic community, they have a name for that. They call it streaming, when the after-imagey blobs in your vision, the chartreuse and purple, begin to become more salient and start doing that. He says that when you do salvia, it's important that you... No, I think maybe he was talking about DMT, yeah. That you close your eyes, sitting in quiet darkness or whatever, and then look at the back of your eyelids with the expectation of seeing something. That's actually an important step, and that a lot of people don't do it. I don't get that radar sweep thing very often, though. Like, I remember having it quite saliently about a month ago, maybe more so than ever before, but it didn't last more than a minute or two, and then it sort of faded away again. It always makes me feel a little cheaty when you describe these things, because, I'm using drugs and stuff, and you're just sitting there doing it.
Well, I have vision problems.
It It's true.
I think the eye static I have is totally a brain thing, though. One other person on my Facebook friends list admitted to having it.
Oh, another interesting thing, actually. On even reasonably low doses of salvia, if you're watching like a video or something, the illusion of three-dimensional space is much more significant than it is normally. Like you can just be watching a video of something like, whoa, it looks 3D. I wonder if that would work for you, given your lazy eye.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no actual binocular vision happening, so given that it's completely hallucinatory, it seems entirely possible that you would see it too.
I don't know if salvia is even legal in Texas anymore.
Well, even if it's illegal, it's not going to be prosecuted. Nobody really gives a shit.
Shouldn't.
Let's take a look. Salvia. I already ordered some here. I ordered the liquid form, so I don't have to smoke it. I hate smoking.
Wait, they have that?
Yeah. It's not as severe, and it's unpleasant because you can't actually drink salvia. It's not active in the stomach. You have to just sit around with it in your mouth, under your tongue, or whatever, and it tastes bad, but it does work. And it lasts longer that way. It's not as when you smoke it, it's actually a little bit problematically finicky, because if you don't do enough, not much happens. If you do too much, you don't even remember it. So I figure it should be easier to regulate the dosage to the appropriate level sublingually. Where were we? Chemistry, potency, ingestion, legal status. Main article, legal status of salvia divinorum in the United States. Ban being considered in Texas, but it's not banned.
Great.
Actually, it looks like it is banned in Wisconsin, according to this chart. It doesn't seem like it squares with what I actually read. In Alabama, it notes that the law against it misspelled it.
Thanks, Wikipedia.
That's just sad.
Did they spell it Savlia?
They misspelled Salvinorin A as Salvinorum A. That's the actual drug in the plant. Yeah, it's like, basically the way that it's worded in Wisconsin is that it's illegal, but with the exception of if you're over 18. So basically it's not illegal. It's no more illegal than regular cigarettes. Marking it banned on the map seems like an overstatement. But, again, nobody gives a shit, so the actual legal status is sort of irrelevant. Texas.
I don't like the way you said that, stranger.
Yeah, okay, Texas had a bill to put it in Penalty Group 2 of the Texas Controlled Substances Act. That died. Penalty Group 3 of the Texas Controlled Substances Act also died. Proposed concurrently, no, that died too. And then there's two proposed bills that are basically the same, and they nothing happened really, or hasn't happened yet. That was 2008, so apparently that went nowhere. Your government at work.
Good job. So what was your point? The beast that eats its young, that's it.
The beast that swallows its young. Oh, that was the main thing. What else? What else have I got here?
Wait, where did you go to meet that guy? Like in your house?
In a coffee shop about a block away.
Doesn't he live in Minnesota, you said? Or Milwaukee?
He works in Milwaukee, lives in Madison, actually reasonably nearby, I think. His daughter sounded cute over the phone.
Yeah, that's... well, actually, I think there is statistical bias for people who have good, pleasant voices to be more symmetrical or something.
Apparently she's one of those blind people who can actually read printed text just by running her nose over the page.
What?
Like Braille, but considerably more difficult.
Why, because the ink changes the texture of the print?
Slightly raised.
Very slightly raised.
Well, depending on the printing method.
Dare you enter my magical realm?
I don't see what that connected to. I wonder if my weird aversion to eye contact would apply to her. My guess is it would actually be even more intense, because I know she's not looking at me, so whatever I'm seeing in her eyes is something else. Probably inadvisable to try and meet her, though.
Why? She's your new best friend's daughter?
Because her father is a devout Roman Catholic who knows I'm evil, and her mother is a criminal psychopath.
But she sounds cute over the phone, right?
She does. Yeah, and by coincidence, I have ended up with her cell phone number. But probably just best to leave it be.
Yeah, you should just start calling her out of the blue anyway, though.
I should text her. Took you a while to get that.
No, I got it immediately. I just couldn't remember the words for it.
Oh, words for what?
The moon rock thing.
Oh, that is actually what I was thinking of. But no, the joke is she's blind. She can't read text messages.
She can get it through audio. I'm sure that she has some accessibility thing on her phone for it.
Well, that's one theory, sure. You know what I think the accessibility version of text messages is? Just using the fucking phone as a phone.
I mean, like, somebody can text her and it'll play the text as it'll be text-to-speech.
Possible. The doctor's cell phone is pretty old, though.
Mm-hmm.
Batteries on it died. That's why he had to use mine. So, but, yeah. The, metafable thing, I feel like I figured something out regarding it, and then I got sidetracked into math. Too much math. Too much math. Math happened, and it was bad.
Story of my life.
No, it isn't. Don't lie. When has math ever happened in the story of your life?
When I went to school, I did math.
Nah, they don't really have any math in school. Not real math. Here, I'll show you the math that happened today.
I'm supposed to be drawing something in my life.
Oh,
I mean, not for you. I mean,
just in general.
I have felt really bad this past day and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any particular reason?
Failure, etc.
Oh, well, try drawing.
That kind of feeling.
Something good. Here, see, like, math.
It's too much effort.
This is entirely pointless, too.
It proves nothing.
It really doesn't. It's not even intended to prove something. It's just a skeleton of an awful, awful story problem that no one will ever solve.
Did you come up with this story problem yourself?
Yes, I did.
You make me sick.
I make you sick too, Quentin. We're both part of the system. I draw a box, you walk a beat. Like you said, keep your head down, just look at what's in front of you. I mean, nobody wants to see the big picture. Life's too complicated. I mean, let's face it, the reason we're here is that it's out of control. You remember that movie? Cube?
That
was a good movie.
I was thinking that maybe I would be happier if I tried to be more like other people.
Yeah.
Have like more relatable ideas and emotions. Because like when I talk about stuff, people can't really relate to me.
Yeah.
I guess you might have the same problem, except that you're not afraid to tell them, and they'll just listen to you regardless, or block you.
Yeah.
Or you don't care that people block you.
Well, you know, it does frustrate me that nobody seems to get what I'm talking about. Like, I like talking to Dr. Bohn the other day because even if, you know, we're obviously not entirely on the same page, when I tell him that I'm evil, he at least takes that seriously, whereas the psychiatrists don't really seem to grasp what I'm saying. They'll just ask, like, well, are you thinking about hurting anyone? No, that's not really the point.
Yes, but that's also not the point.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I do, but it really isn't the point. The things that I do that seem wholesome to them are actually the worst things. Information is very, very dangerous. A lot more dangerous than just sticking spiders in somebody's house.
Information is dangerous, you say. You have some big secret you're not supposed to tell anybody, right?
No. Well, I mean, I do think I've figured out some things that I am not telling people, but it's more because I haven't really quite figured out how best to explain them. They're not secret. It's just a bad explanation could be more dangerous than a good one. But, yeah, I'm ambivalent about it, really. Mainly when I say information is dangerous, I mean the sort of stuff that's ubiquitous, that's not a secret at all, that you couldn't put back in the box if you tried. We already know too much. It's like global warming. Critical threshold was reached, I think, sometime in the 70s. It's too late.
It was too late 3-4 decades ago, huh?
Yeah.
It's that way it is.
It is. Well, you could drive an LP von Schweetz. You never actually did.
That also sounds too hard.
Well, fine, don't.
Thanks.
Just do a lazy job. Maybe try that.
You'll get mad and be like, it's too lazy.
When have I ever said that?
You'll say that it doesn't look anything like her.
I might say that.
That's what a lazy job on a caricature is.
Oh, also, you should use a 4-panel template rather than a 3-panel template.
What? No.
Why the hell
Why?
not? Well, why? What's so great about 3 panels?
It's much funnier than 4 panels.
What?
It's got better timing. Having 4 panels would just give you too many words.
Well, these are going to be infinite canvas anyway. It's not like it's just a 4-panel beat structure.
Are you talking about for Destructicon comics?
No, not for Metafable. You can use 3 panels if you want. I don't give a shit about that. But for Impossible Maze, it should, or Metafable, it should be 4 panels. The thing in my head was pretty explicit about that one, actually. For some reason.
For some reason?
I don't know why that's important. I don't know if I believe that it is, really. But I do think 4 panels is better. 4 panels across. We use 4/4 time for everything in music, for instance. It's, there is 3/4, but that's a waltz. Not a lot of waltzes.
Well, in the grand scheme of things, I guess that's true. But are waltzes the best? Yes. Are waltzes better than people? Yes.
Well, the church thought so. People call 4/4 common time sometimes because the symbol for it is C in the musical notation, but it's not actually a C. It's a broken circle. The whole circle is 3/4 time, represents divinity because of the tripartite nature of God, and then the broken circle is for 4/4 because there's three of God, not 4. You're doing it wrong. True fact.
True facts.
But then they banned the tritone because that was from the devil.
Wow.
What?
Is that elf-related also? Banning things because they're from the devil?
I don't think so.
Are elves the devil?
No more so than elves are God.
Are you gonna go all creepy religious on me?
No, I don't really believe in God in the sense of a being that's the ultimate creator or that deserves to be worshipped or that's the sort of moral authority behind things. I don't find that to be philosophically coherent. Another thing that made Dr. Bohn stumble a little bit was that I believed in an infinite regress, He tried to say, well, okay, but even if it goes on infinitely, then what created that infinity? God. And I was like, well, you can just have another infinity behind that infinity, and there's an infinity of infinities. That's how it works in math. There's always another one. If you run out of them, it just means that you've failed to come up with a notation.
Infinite infinities. So infinity is infinity. I get it.
Well, it's not that complicated. I mean, really, it just intuitively to me, it seems like it's more plausible than a magical first cause that exists without a reason,
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm with you here.
So, but no, I'm not tending in a religious or direction.
It's just, it sounds a little religious when you talk about elves.
Yeah, well, it's certainly
a problem with society.
It's certainly sort of woo-woo. I mean, it's not religious, but it's more toward that than science, I guess, kind of.
Yeah, I don't understand where you get off thinking that magical elves could ever be in any way scientific explanation for anything.
Well, what do you think of the miracle of the sun, for instance?
I think the entire story was fabricated by the United States government.
In 1917.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
For what reason?
It was Teddy Roosevelt.
That's not a reason.
He thought it would be funny. It was his revenge on the Spaniards.
It happened in Portugal.
They're all fucking Mexican. Oh, he was. He's a big racist.
This is difficult to fake, though. I mean, you have tens of thousands of witnesses, and some of them from prestigious universities, skeptical newspapers, etc. I mean, there's a lot of evidence here.
So what do you think it was?
Magical elves.
Well, what was their goal?
Basically fucking with people, but, there's a certain aspect to it that I feel like I get, and there's a lot of it that I still don't. I think, it used to be the thing that frustrated me about UFO research was,
Wait, don't you think it could have been fabricated by the church?
No, they don't have either the inclination to make up something of that character or the cleverness to hide all the seams of it and that sort of thing.
What if Portugal wasn't like a rich country.
Not particularly.
It's not like people were, going down there to investigate it either, were they?
Some of them were. The ones from the skeptical newspapers and university types were. This came on after a sequence of, increasingly well-attended visitations, and people didn't see things that were as miraculous as those, but there were attendant weird effects, all of them commonly UFO related. If you read, what's the title of the book? I have it on my bookshelf here. I'll just walk over there and get it.
The Mothman's fanfic.
Heavenly Lights, the aberrations of Fatima and the UFO phenomenon. The book starts out by just going through the sort of the little miracles, all the weird stuff that people saw in the weeks leading up to the big one, and going over, okay, so there were a number of instances of people reporting angel hair. There were a number of instances of people reporting buzzing noises that sounded sort of insect-y but weird or were inside their head, animals behaving oddly, etc., etc. And each one of these, it'll go through and list all the different people who saw it and what exactly they said they saw in the sources, and then it'll go over the parallels in ufology, and then it goes on to the next one, and it's tedious to read because it just goes on for pages and pages and pages. But before you even get to the main event, you're like, all right, I'm convinced. It's just disgustingly obvious that this is something not normal.
So all you have to do to convince you is to write a really tedious book. Did Vincent convince you that Pokey was real, or that it was good?
Well, I mean, they're not...
They're
just collecting evidence that already exists. I mean, these guys aren't really amazing writers or anything. They're just curators of evidence, like most ufologists.
Did Vinny send you his news story?
He did not.
No. It was entertaining. Maybe he wants you to buy it in print when it gets printed in the magazine. That's his plan to hurt you.
I don't think I will buy it in print.
I'll buy it and send it to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could read you an excerpt of this, but it really does go on and on and on.
Yeah, I don't think I would like that.
That's how ufology always is. It's just like if you actually wanted to look at some evidence, it will go on longer than you have the patience for.
I don't have a lot of that in the first place.
And this was the pattern when I was first getting involved with this. It's like I'd read about UFOs for a couple days and be really interested in it, and then eventually I would start doing other things because they came up or whatever, and maybe a week later I'd think to myself, oh, UFOs, okay, wait a minute, UFOs, really? Flying saucers? Do I really believe that? The evidence seemed legitimate at the time, but let's revisit that and see if that makes sense. And then I go back to it and say, no, this still adds up. This makes sense. The things I look into, the holes that I thought I might have seen from a little more distant perspective, in fact, just lead to more evidence of the same thing. And I would go through this repeatedly until eventually it just stuck permanently. I mean, you know me, more or less, how I think.
Read things and do things. Yeah, that kind of person.
Well, I don't really do things. Other than that, you're pretty much on the money.
So you read things?
Yeah.
They have to have some kind of thing.
They have to have some
They have to have some kind of basis in statistical probability, I guess.
What do?
For you to believe in it.
Well, I do prefer sort of meta-analyses of things, like Jacques Vallée-style things, where he shows various patterns or lack of patterns that exist in the aggregated data. But individual reports are important, too. One of the disturbing things from this Neuroscience of Personality book?
What's that?
Is, stop me if I already told you about this, because I can't remember who I randomly went on about it at, and presumably didn't get any feedback. But there's two regions near the front of the brain, F3 and F4, that are called the deductive analyst and the expert classifier. One of them puts things into the correct category, and one of them just does actual, literal logical deductions, like if you were reasoning through things in the way that Sherlock Holmes does, or House MD, or whatever. And virtually none of the personality types use them. One of them uses F3 a bit, a couple of the other ones use one or the other a little teensy bit, and then my type uses both of them heavily. And then there's one other type that uses both of them heavily, and it's my brother's type, peculiarly. And that's it. We're the only two.
What did you type? INTJ?
INTP. Ben is INTJ. We're easily confusable, but actually fairly different under the surface. And in fact, he's on the other side.
Oh, good.
Yeah, him and Lewis and Wilson are all goody types. It was actually one of the first discontinuities that I noticed between him and me when I started talking to him. I don't remember under what context it came up, but it was like, oh, he's a good person. Well, maybe we're not so similar.
Goody little two-shoes.
Because I thought he was, he seemed a bit sinister because he's so polite all the time, but he has this way of sort of perverting the topic of a conversation. But he's not being polite as a sort of disguise. He really is being polite just to be polite, because within the intuitive moral ontology of the introverted feeler type, it actually matters how you express yourself on a moral level. But there's a...
so you're saying that you and your brother are the only two people who are worth shit?
I wouldn't say that exactly. I don't know what he's good for, but he's... It's disturbing to me that apparently only people of my type are using these regions, at all. It seems like... I remember reading when I was first reading these that... only people of a certain type really made extensive use of these areas, but they don't really emphasize how severe the difference is. If you look at any of the other brain regions, there's plenty of different types who use them. But why do we even have these if only 1/16 of the population, I guess they're just only used obscurely by most people, only used in certain peculiar contexts or something? It doesn't seem right.
Maybe our ancestors more heavily used them.
That seems very dubious, but possible, I guess. Nowadays, maybe a lot of these things are taken over by language, maybe, that they didn't used to be. They had to be done intuitively, and now people will use language to perform a sort of a simulacrum of logical thinking, or actually intuitively knowing what category things belong in, or whatever. Like the expert classifier is the one that lets you know that a dolphin is a mammal, not a fish. Presumably, that's something people know.
Yeah, unless you're a redneck.
But I guess they don't use the same part of the brain for doing that I do, or they just don't do that kind of categorization at all, unless it's in a context where you would look like an idiot if you didn't. But even talking to Dr. Bohn, I remember as a child thinking that he was very clever, but he still seemed a lot smarter than most people in some ways, but still had a kind of a superficiality to his logic, to the extent that you could understand how he was religious and still, scientific to the extent that he was. Because it's just like something that did most of the work of actual logic in most contexts, but wasn't really the same thing.
Oh yeah, where did you get that neuroscience of personality? Is that ebooks?
No, it's on Amazon.
Oh man.
Yeah, I didn't want to buy it. I was a little grumpy about it, but it was worth it. I will buy books if I can't pirate them. It's not a point of principle or anything. It's just usually easier to pirate stuff. But, I feel like when I'm explaining to people what the actual evidence for flying saucers is, that they're not really connecting to what I'm saying. Even if I do convince them, they're convinced for the wrong reasons. And I think this is why. It's because they can't weigh the evidence in the way that needs to be done.
I see.
People's impression, and my impression when I started out, was that all of these case reports, were just a patchwork of lies, misidentifications, dreams, hallucinations, exaggerations, etc. And that, if you picked through them, you'd be able to say, okay, well, this one they were seeing a lenticular cloud, planet Venus, this person's just a crazy liar, this one was having a lucid dream, whatever. But in practice, you run into case after case after case where you say, well, okay, there are multiple witnesses, and some of them separated by significant distances, didn't know each other, so this wasn't a hallucination, and it couldn't have been a misidentification of the planet Venus, given the complexity and the weird behavior this thing exhibited, and they don't seem like liars, but that's kind of the only option left on the table unless we want to admit that this thing is real. So either they're lying, or the people who picked up the story in the interim are lying, and especially in cases where it's not even reported as a UFO, but rather as something more religious or a ball of lightning or something like that. But looking at the pattern of it, you say, okay, this is definitely not what they thought it was, but what the hell was it? then it doesn't seem like it's plausible to consider these thousands and thousands of cases as all being lies. Because that's what it comes down to, is that they would have to be lies, or everyone reporting them between you and the actual event was lying. In which case, how can you trust absolutely anything if you can't trust any other human being, and they're all just lying in this completely patternless way, and no one is checking them, no one is pointing them out, no one is pulling away the curtain, even though potentially, apparently, it would have to be so easy, since anyone checking a single one of the things they said would find evidence to the contrary. And it's something that I guess I can understand.
It's very easy for me to believe that everybody is lying and you can't trust anybody, though.
Yeah, but all lying in the same way, in a way that fits congruently together like this,
you mean,
for no reason.
In a single case?
On any scale.
You mean a single case where people report the same thing, or are you talking about people reporting similar behaviors?
Extremely similar things, at similar times, similar patterns of behavior. Like the Australian vehicle interference cases, for instance. I mean, they just go on and on and on, and it's different details, but it's the same general pattern, repeated over and over and over. And statistically, you can analyze these people. They're a normal slice of the population. If they were liars, that doesn't seem like it should be the case. And it's the same for anybody. It's not a bunch of crazy people up in, Southern California who've obviously been in the desert doing peyote for 3 days. It's normal people, boring people.
That's your big red flag there, isn't it?
Well, it is. For people like that, for a statistically normal sample of the population to be spontaneously lying about something like this for no good reason, and to stay consistent in their lies, even when you go back and ask them to repeat the details of the thing years later, which we often do, actually. MUFON does this routinely. It just, how on earth could something like that happen? Even if that was the explanation, unbelievably, it would something that would itself need to be explained. It would be something of the same caliber of weirdness, But I can understand how people don't see this if they're not really concretely making the categorizations of things as they go ahead. They go through and they'll get a case and they're like, this one seems a little bit tricky to classify, I don't know, and then they just move on. And they don't actually look at it clearly enough to say, okay, this can't be this, it can't be that, it can't be this, it can't be that. The only bucket left is lie. This literally has to be a lie, or we admit that the things are flying saucers. And then do that with the next one, and do that with the next one, and have this sense of all of these cases stacking up that are all lies, when you thought at the beginning that it was going to be a patchwork of misidentifications of lenticular clouds and things. People don't really seem to get that. They don't even really seem, for the most part, to look at the evidence in the first place. Even people who are like official UFO skeptics or whatever, who go on the radio and tell you why it's all a bunch of lucid dreaming and such. You confront them with one actual case report, and it's like they've never read one before. It's bizarre. But, it's just disturbing to me that the skills that I have for doing this apparently are so rare. It doesn't seem right. And I mean that in the sense that, just evolutionarily, it seems like there's a benefit to having them. Why don't more people? Is there some downside to them that I'm not seeing?